fall out, all of all bow wow, call tall pow, south side, outside, pow outline, missile thought, fire bounce, higher powers out now. I was outside, now my power pow now. Eyes wide, should've speak utterly upside down, camera obscura, power down scuba, mama in Cuba, my it sounds good now. Out and about, title bout, bow, how loud, high loud, Mutai, Aztec, forearm, Nasdaq, abstract, Frackle rockin' chow down, hazmat to deuces, diametrically outbound. Matter of fact, pass that ginger pop in the cooler than the medulla of Rick the ruler. Hula hooping with new bow downs from Nuba. That's that life of a king, got my crown now, feeling accomplished. Super looper fresh chocolate, collectible conscious, young crunk in your town now. Via minor aircraft, snapping like a bear trap. Tijuana Air Max, chainmail gauntlet. Big Bertha earthquakes, 100 dB, 90 BPM, heavy hitting them triplets, 100-sided dice, rolling 79 twice. Get ready, we bringing the jazz back with the rhythm, we giving them influence on some Midwest liquid mission, tricky nicks and mixing, matching, scratching, rapping, action, Jackson making it happen, pap it, midi, patch it, map it with a pinch of magic, casting master sentences, with a gang of wicked vixens, listening close to O's, flipping different widgets, mystic digits, coast to coast, pole to pole, folding time, golden time. Overload on. I want to say everybody doing psychic readings and things like that, there's a big responsibility in not in not preying upon people that are mentally ill, right? So this is talking about some Nu Lyfe Tools lectures. He talks about a lot of metaphysical things in his lectures. So I'm not against, people talking about metaphysics. I teach about all the dimensions and possibilities that in this universe. So that's why we're talking about dimensionality right now, the fourth dimension. That's why I have this kind of fifth, seventh, eighth, 10th dimensional, weird Facebook thing going on right now. I feel like, if you're going to tell people that there's demons in the mirror and stuff like that, and you're talking to these demons in the mirror, you should give some proof to back it up, as far as Candyman and things like that, or Papa Legba, things like that, they say that there's 11 dimensions, you know what I'm saying? Some people say there's 21 dimensions, some people say there's infinite dimensions. But as far as, on Earth right now, most people are, pretty much, we'll go into, I'll take a little excerpt of this cat on dimensionality, but, I believe the 8th dimension is locked, a locked dimension where, things, I don't think anything is really moving or existing in that dimension.
There will be no physical existence of any object that is present in the 8th dimension. So anyone living in this dimension would not be able to touch anything.
But, Nu Lyfe Tools was saying that, he used to be a nurse or working in the hospital system, and he would see the ghosts in the, he would see the ghosts in the hospitals and things like that. I'm not saying that the paranormal, things aren't real, because, myself, when my father passed away, I was 3 years old, and he was in New York, and we were in Milwaukee. They had separated. Months earlier that year, they had separated, and he actually died of a speedball overdose in Midtown, and they found him in a boiler room, but I was a kid. I was, kind of like what happened to Nikola Tesla when he was aware of his mom's death, and notice how fast, Nu Lyfe Tools has come onto the scene too. If you want to talk about, stuff like that. Promoting, black fear. So this is anti-black fear lecture. It's totally enough. Nu Lyfe Tools is you got to stop preying on our community, and please start showing some proof of what you're talking about. All right. So please show some proof, because really you're doing kind of Miss Cleo kind of stuff at this point, as far as, all that Candyman stuff. I'm just kind of, sending a warning out in the so-called conscious community of, people preying upon people's fears because he's just like saying some Candyman type stuff and kind of preying on there's a lot of unstable people on YouTube, and so if there's a lot of unstable people on YouTube and you start talking about the afterlife, that's one thing. You know what I'm saying? Right here you can see my chakras are lit up. Metaphysics is usually just science that most people haven't siphoned or grasped yet. But the thing is that with magic and science, it's pretty much all the same stuff. And it's just there's different dimensions of different things. We can see different planes. You know what I'm saying? It's like Predator sees things like this. We can see whether it's infrared. You know what I'm saying? Whether it's the human eyesight has a very small limited spectrum. There's a lot of things that we're not seeing. So I'm not saying that you can't see ghosts and stuff like that. I'm not saying that. I do believe, that things like that can happen. I'm just talking about when you're telling people that there's demons in the mirror and stuff like that, and that you're talking to these demons in the mirror, and, you got about 30,000 subscribers, So if you take, mentally ill people, let's say it's 10% of the population or something like that, then out of your 30,000 subscribers, you might have 3,000 people that, that might be on the edge or might, really believe that the stuff that you're saying, So if you're not pushing any diagrams and you're not, showing the science of these things that you're speaking of, then you're actually playing a very, very dangerous game because, I've had friends that, what I'm saying, or done things that, push them over the edge, which is essentially, things like that. I had an old roommate back in the day, this cat, Neil Chamberlain, this cat, and he would like drink and ride his bike and stuff like that. And, he had gotten hit by a car once before, but then, he eventually died that way. He was in Bellevue Hospital and he never made it. You know what I'm saying? So, shout out to Neil Chamberlain in the afterlife. He actually helped me with my first music video, Welcome to the Circus. I actually edited it on his setup, for Crunk Tesla heads out there. But yeah, we're here at Cleopatra's Needle, you know what I'm saying, in the infrared spectrum. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, so I'm talking about the S word. I don't want to say it with the algorithms and stuff like that, but pushing people over the edge, things like that. You know what I'm saying? And Nu Lyfe Tools, that Candyman kind of talk. When I say Candyman, I'm talking about the actual looking in the mirror, Candyman type of stuff. He's some of his fans could be pushed over the edge by the things that he's saying. You know what I'm saying? If you're like, oh, I'm seeing ghosts, and and this and that about the afterlife and all that, and he's not presenting any any diagrams or any type of literature or pictures or imagery or anything like that, then it becomes it can become brainwashing. You know what I'm saying? It can become brainwashing, and it can become cult behavior. And I was speaking before in the last part of this lecture about that we already got the Nature Boy cult, Atlanta and Puerto Rico, back and forth and things like that. Even with shout out to my homie Uma Kahir York, even with the Nubians, she's exposed Nubians, you know what I'm saying, and polite people and stuff like that. There's all this cult stuff going on, and even like with Bro Panic and all these things, there's a lot of Hotep cats are getting on some dark stuff. So shout out to General Seti for calling all that out. Even Young Pharaoh for calling out all that type of stuff. You know what I'm saying? Because in the community, in the conscious community, as far as when I'm saying conscious community, I'm just saying like people that are actually trying to talk about history and stuff like that. To me, Hotep just means historian. You know what I'm saying? And it seems like us Black American cats are pretty much the only cats that are, really, lecturing on history and debating history and things like that. But when we start to get in the metaphysical world, all that stuff's, you got to start presenting the history of it and relating to whatever these other things, because I understand that, you look up to Bobby Hemmett, shout out to Bobby Hemmett. But the thing is that even Bobby Hemmett, can be critiqued, and a lot of people got mad when young Pharaoh, critiqued Bobby Hemmett, and I think everybody can be critiqued. You know what I'm saying? So if you're lecturing, you know what I'm saying? And but with Nu Lyfe Tools, you can't be scaring people like that. All right, peace everybody. This is DJ Radon at TTM Academy, and today we're going to be talking about a very, very serious issue. This is a follow-up of the lecture on Nu Lyfe Tools, bro Yosef. Yeah, so I noticed that bro Yosef is kind of playing on a lot of people's fears. You know what I'm saying? He's using kind of a lot of the same doctrine that, whether it's the Catholic Church or a lot of the Christian church in the history of churches, a lot of preachers will use fear and say like it's all about suffering, and even the concept of limbo that's used by the Catholic Church, that was used by them to extort people for money, basically saying that like, hey, your relative is in limbo right now, you got to give us some money to be able to get them out of limbo, right? But the thing about that is that he was just saying in a lecture, this is about two different lectures. One lecture, he's talking about demons in the mirror that he talks to, and then there's another lecture about how you should, prepare your family members for death and stuff like that. And he was saying that, like, if you don't say the right rites for your family members when they pass away, then he's saying that what happens is that they get in some type of purgatory limbo, just like the Catholic Church. They get in this purgatory limbo forever, or 1,000 years, or 100 years. He was saying, all this stuff. He's just pulling out his hat. You know what I'm saying? And that's why I'm totally open to I lecture on metaphysics and as it relates to real science in this universe. But the thing is that you can't just do that and try to scare people. You know what I'm saying? Because a lot of people are mentally ill. They say upwards of up to even 10% of the population, 7%, 5% of the population, right? And I got cut off before in the last lecture. Facebook kind of censored some of the stuff I was saying, or maybe just deleted it by accident. Facebook, the stream wasn't continuous. So, yesterday I got cut off talking about this subject, but I want to talk about his lectures specifically. Now I'm going to focus, before I get to the demons in the mirror lecture of the one that he's, preying upon mentally ill people, you know what I'm saying? Because if you're a mentally ill person and you're following bro Yosef and you really believe of these demons in the mirror that he sees and stuff like that, and then you start seeing them, you got schizophrenia or something, he's just going to be exacerbating all those things. And then also he's doing the whole kamikaze, don't fear death thing. And I'm not saying that you should fear, obviously, the Book of the Dead, Egyptian Book of the Dead, and, there's all different types of, cultures that look at in a different way. But as far as people that are the S word, the people that are on the edge, just like Lil Uzi Vert, don't, push me to the edge. All my friends are, you know what I'm saying? It's just this death fixation and, fear and suffering and all that type of stuff. And, I just noticed that I feel like Nu Lyfe Tools, bro, Yosef is kind of pushing the same stuff that preachers have always been pushing, of like, fear, come to me, you're going to need my tools for salvation type of thing. And so he was saying that unless you have say some specific rites by Anubis, your family member is going to be like a zombie in purgatory forever. That's what he was saying. So he's saying that anybody that didn't, because he was saying like, like let's say somebody gives some burial rites and it's a, Muslim church, or it's a Christian church or Jewish church, or, any type of, organization or something like that, or religion or whatever, these different rites. he's saying that it's all invalid unless it's only Egyptian, and it's only like, you know, a Hotep thing. So he's basically saying, if you don't know the rites that I know, your family is going to, everybody's cursed and they're just a zombie in the afterlife, unless they're fifth dimensional. But everybody's fifth dimensional. We all exist. We exist in all dimensions. You know what I'm saying? You know, unless you're an empty avatar, obviously. But you know, we exist in all dimensions. You know. And today I'm at a very, very special place. You know, a very, very special place. I'm gonna show that special place. Let me see if I can turn off this little effect thing. Let's see. So I'm gonna turn off this effect. Maybe I can't turn it off. Maybe I have to switch it to like another effect or something. Like, let me see if I switch it to this. All right. So let me let's see. Let me turn this thing off. I don't know how to turn this off. I'm like playing with these Facebook effects. It's funny they got the fez up in here. Let me see. I'm just trying to turn off these Facebook effects, but let me just put it on something like that. All right, or something. I'm not trying to change my face. I'm just, oh, here you go. No effect. All right, boom. So yeah. So I'm right here. I'm at a very, very special place. I'm at the place where my father passed away. We're at 205 West End. And I'm going to flip around so you can see we're at 205 West End in Manhattan. And you know, this is actually where my father passed away. And before my lecture from yesterday got cut off, I was talking about the fact that when I was 3 years old, I was hanging out with my mom, and you know, I was 3, and I was like, Mom, is my dad dead? And she looked at me like, what are you talking about? You know, I think this was like, you know, like maybe it was Thursday or something, you know. And then on Saturday, I believe she got the call. Somebody was like, you know, I'm not sure who contacted her, but she got the call about my father having passed away here in New York at this exact building at 205 West End Avenue. You know, my father, he was actually a radiologist before he passed away. But you know, like many brothers, you know, before him, you know, whether it's the opium wars and things like that, you know, Europeans brought a bunch of different alcohols and drugs and to try to, you know, control the natives. He was actually a Cherokee, my father, Black Cherokee, and from Tennessee Cherokees. And you know, he you know, had just finished medical school, and he died of an overdose here, of a speedball overdose. You know, so obviously I do believe in the metaphysical world, but I believe that the metaphysical world is you know, it all relates to some type of, you know, science that it's in our world. But obviously we're never going to know everything as far as science, and that's, you know, where, you know, science and magic and, you know, metaphysical world and all these things intersect. But yeah, I was 3 years old, and I was like, you know, Mom, is my dad dead? And she was like, no, you know. And then, you know, we found out a day or so later that he had passed away. So, and this is a similar thing that happened to Nikola Tesla. Actually, the same thing happened to him, where the moment his mother died, he automatically knew that she, you know, so there was some type of connection, call it, you know, like, now the science of, electrons and you know, they, you know, in the blogs, they'll call it teleportation, but really it's more about, things being in a locked quantum state where they can communicate with each other, you know. So it's not really teleportation. It's that when you have two things that are together and then you separate those things can still communicate with each other no matter how far away they are. And they've proven that recently with science and things like that. You know, as far as locked states, you know. But you know, so that was an early thing that happened to me. And then I think more recently, I remember I was having a dream. I feel like Facebook cut this out too in my last lecture. I was having a dream, and this was in Bed-Stuy. This was like maybe 8 years ago or something like that. This was in Bed-Stuy, and I had a dream about somebody being in an apartment and them being kind of like a bad person, kind of like Freddy Krueger, and the apartment burned down and they passed away inside the apartment. And then when I woke up in the morning, I found that literally a block away, somebody died in their apartment, like that, like totally the same way. And obviously when I was asleep and I probably heard the fire trucks and ambulances come and try to stop the fire. This was on like, Jefferson and, this was on like Jefferson near Kingston, but, and this was like the top floor of a brownstone, so that, that was kind of trippy for me. And so those kind of things happen to me all the time. So yeah, I do, believe in the metaphysical world, things that we don't quite understand yet. But the thing is that once you start doing a lot of lectures in the metaphysical world, that's cool. But the thing is, if you're actually focusing on death and the S word, pushing people to the edge and stuff like that, then it becomes problematic and actually toxic. I'm not saying it's toxic to say don't fear. I'm saying it's toxic to push the kamikaze stuff to people, like what the emperors in Japan were doing. We're saying like, hey, life is kind of meaningless and unless you're giving yourself to your emperor or whatever, throw your into this right into the ship or whatever. Like kamikaze pilots and whatnot, So, yeah, every culture is allowed to have their own, spiritual belief systems and things like that. But bro, Yosef was, these 2 lectures that I'm responding to, he's playing on people's fears and, and is very, very dangerous because, he was saying he in his lecture, the one on cremation and, cremation versus burying, he was saying that everybody's dying. We're all dying. You know what I'm saying? Like that type of thing, So to the rest of the population that's not mentally ill, we're just like, oh, okay, yeah, that's his like way of saying something. But to somebody that's mentally ill, and he's monetizing this stuff, he's monetizing, that. So somebody that's mentally ill, that they're going to freak out when they hear that, like I'm dying right now. I'm dying. And I don't believe that. I don't believe that whole thing that him, what he's saying like, oh, we're all dying and then death is the end, or I mean, not the end, but death is the, transition to the next thing. And obviously that's true. Death is a transition. But the thing is that whole idea of we're all just dying is not real because, if somebody has cancer, then yes, they're dying, they're progressively dying. But age in itself, if you're like an immortalist like Dr. Joel Pookrum, age in itself is doesn't have to be a thing about dying. You know what I'm saying? Our bodies are constantly regenerating itself every time we go to sleep. Now, like with the song, I'm going to use the cadence example as an example. So like songs have a cadence, right? A cadence is kind of like the way you kind of like, you can end the song where it's like dum dum bum bum bum, right? Like that, you know what I'm saying? Ending the song like that. So like that would be the end of the song where it's like, oh, okay, the song's getting quieter and they do a little thing at the end or something, and that's death is a lot like that, where it's like you're healthy, and then maybe somebody's 105 years old and they were healthy, and then it was like, oh, they got that bacterial infection, and then the health starts to fade out and decrescendo, and as it decrescendos, but the whole song isn't just one decrescendo. So what Nu Lyfe is saying is that your whole life is just one decrescendo until you, and that's playing upon people's fears and sufferings exactly the same way the Catholic Church, the Protestant Church, a lot of churches, you know what I'm saying? A lot of mosques, people will talk about, fear, suffering, and come to us for salvation and that type of thing like that. So he's basically just saying your whole life is one downward slope into like one long decrescendo, but that's not real, because life, you're healthy until there comes a certain point when you do start to decline. And yeah, that can be 20 years for somebody, that can be 5 years for somebody else, or it could be 5 days for somebody else. Somebody could be healthy, and then boom, there was 5 days when things went down. Or somebody can be 100% healthy and the song ends totally abruptly. Song relating their life as like a song, their life ends totally abruptly, and it's something happens immediately. So telling people that their whole life is they're dying is, and you're monetizing it, is playing off of people's fears. And obviously those of us who aren't mentally ill can handle that type of talk. But people that are actually dealing with mental illness, I had an ex-girlfriend from Japan named Kay actually. And this was decades ago. And we were dating, and she was having a culture shock. She was learning English, going to English school in New York. She was having a culture shock. She thought my friends were talking about her. She was just kind of paranoid. But then the thing is, eventually she got so paranoid that she was watching TV and being like, oh my, they're talking about me on TV. They're saying stupid Japanese girl. And I'm like, no, they're not talking about you on TV. I'm like, hey, yo, they're not talking about you on TV, and eventually she had to leave New York. She totally lost her mind and had to go back to Japan, and went into a mental institution in Japan. And I know other people dealing with mental illness, things like that. And for those people, if you tell them that there's demons in the mirror, that's going to totally mess up, their whole mind. You know what I'm saying? And in this lecture, this cremation verse bearing lecture, Nu Lyfe Tools, aka Bro Yosef, was saying he saved one of his relatives once from some demons. Like his relative was dead and they weren't buried correctly because they didn't use the specific Anubis rites. That his relative was in that purgatory zombie state or something, and he literally said Santa Claus. He said he saw like a chariot, but like a Santa Claus chariot, come out of the ground with demons in it and people locked in it, kind of like Scrooged. Like, I don't know if any of y'all saw Scrooged. So he's saying this is real. This really happened to him. Now, I'm not saying that people can't see spirits. I'm not saying that. I believe, people can see spirits. I've never seen a spirit. Different people have different abilities. But the thing is that he's saying that he literally saw a Santa Claus like chariot come out of the ground, a red chariot that looked just like the Santa Claus thing, with the cage in it, with zombies trapped in it, and his relative trapped in there, and he was able to save his relative from this zombie guy. So he's literally telling his followers that he rescues people from the demon world and stuff like that. And if it's a movie, that's one thing, but if you're actually a preacher, and a lot of people look up to lecturers as like a preacher, or somebody to follow, or somebody, or even like a health practitioner. And so he's saying it's called Nu Lyfe Tools. That's the name of his site. And these are like tools for new life. But, if you're giving somebody tools and telling them that your whole life is just one long decrescendo, you're dying every day, that's, and there's demons in the mirror, and I know how to kill those demons, but nobody else does. That's, maybe, somebody's going to DM you and ask you and pay you $200 to, perform some rite for their relative or whatever. And, all that type of stuff is playing on people's, playing on people's fears. And death is a very, very serious issue, and people that are on the edge, it's not good to be telling them Candyman type stuff, and like I was saying before, Papa Legba and all these things. You know what I'm saying? Because a lot of people can really get hurt from that. One, they can hurt, or two, they can it can give them a heart attack. It can, make them totally paranoid. Like I was saying, my ex that thought that people on TV were talking about her, imagine her seeing that Yosef's, speech. You know what I'm saying? So I'm just saying at Nu Lyfe Tools, please think about what you're saying. Cause if you got 30,000 subscribers and 10% might have some type of, let's say 10% are depressed, and let's say it's only 3%. So 10% is what, 3,000 subscribers. All right. So let's say, let's say 1/10 of that. Let's say only, 1/10 of your subscribers. Let's say only 300 people are actually on the edge, right? Out of that 10% mentally ill, only 10% of that are maybe super on the edge. They're not just depressed or, have some, manic issues or whatever. They're dealing with some serious stuff. And, you don't know you don't know what happens to your subscribers. You don't know if your subscriber just jumped the roof. You know what I'm saying? Thinking that like, hey, I'm going to this beautiful transition that Yosef said it was, it's just as good as going to work, tomorrow or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Now, I'm not going against the things he was saying about, saving up for your, for your family in the future, for your kids, all those things are good tools. Those are good tools to say like, yeah, you want to leave try to leave money or land or whatever, trusts or things like that for your kids, and be prepared for death every day. Now, there's nothing wrong to say being prepared for death every day, but when you're saying that your whole life you're just dying, that's not real. That's not real. And all this, demons coming out of the ground and he can fight them, but nobody else on YouTube is saying that they know how to fight these demons and rescue their relatives and things like that. Because he was saying that if you don't use those Anubis rites, your relative is trapped in that demon purgatory world, and only he's not giving any tools for people to know how to get them out of that world, but he's saying he knows how to do it, and there's certain Anubis rites to get them out of that world. But you know what I'm saying? So it's just a sad day, when people in the so-called like conscious community are preying upon people that are mentally ill. And that's why we're right here at, I'm going to flip back around. This is, where my father, he was found here in this building, in a, whatchamacallit, in the boiler room. He was found in the boiler room, after, he was at his friend's house or somebody's house. He signed in, here. This was in, 82. This was 1982. So in this building in 1982, he signed in and he went to his friend's house, and then he was found in the boiler room, passed away, right? And this is actually a famous location, I believe, either Shaft or one of those blaxploitation movies from back in the day. There was a fight scene right here. There was actually a fight scene right here, from, I think it was Shaft maybe, but maybe it was Superfly. It might have been Superfly, but there was definitely, it was like a black kung fu scene right here.
Gonna set me up.
But yeah, so rest in peace to my father, and let's talk about the other dimensions and stuff like that too. Becoming, like, oh, you can't, you're gonna be stuck in that purgatory unless you have fifth dimensional ability or whatever, and he just making this stuff up, but he's not giving us the science of dimensions. Oh, what's the difference between the fourth and the fifth and the sixth and the seventh and the eighth and the ninth and the 10th and the 11th? It's like, we know that we're in the 3D world. 4D is our hand trails. Like you can see my hand, you see more than one hand moving like that. That's the fourth dimension, right? So the fourth dimension is time. Like I was saying before, every new dimension is another axis, right? Every new dimension is another axis. So if you take 3D, we have X, Y, and Z, right? So the Z axis is the third dimension, right? And then so the fourth dimension is just going to be another axis of time. The fifth dimension is just another axis. So the 3D has 3 axes, 4D has 4 axes, 5D has 5 axes, right? So for us in our world, we exist in 3 and 4. We can see time and we experience time, the fourth dimension. But then the fifth dimension is another axis on top of that. So it's the time of people outside of this realm. Like if you're a photon is traveling at the speed of light. So when you're traveling at the speed of light, and you're a photon, then that means that the photon sees the whole universe at once, pretty much. Like if you're at the event horizon, the edge of the black hole, where somebody could just get trapped there and they could see the end of the universe, right? Just like how a photon kind of sees everything at once. If you were riding on a photon, like if you were riding it like a horse, because remember, as you approach the speed of light, time slows down. You know what I'm saying? Time slows down as you approach the speed of light. So once you hit the speed of light, then time stops, and then we get into light years and things like that, but everything else around you is going to, if you're traveling light years, everybody else is aging way faster than you're aging, So it's like, that's why if you're going to talk about Feynman diagrams, look up Richard Feynman, Feynman, Richard Feynman. He's a very famous physicist, and he came up with a lot of these charts that showed you could look at it as predestination or going outside other dimensions, but he would show that if a proton hence an anti-proton and they hit each other, they're going to explode and turn into light. They're going to turn into a photon, right? Or you could look at it as in the reverse, the photon exploded and the photon split into a positron and an electron, right? The opposite of the electron is a positron. So if a positron and an electron hit, that's going to create the photon, right? All right, we're back. Yeah, so I'm going to finish up this lecture on, I was just talking about Richard Feynman and antiparticles. And I'm going to show you how that relates to just different dimensions. Okay, so what Richard Feynman was able to tell us is that he found out that, if you have an antiparticle, let's say you take a proton, the antiparticle would be an antiproton, right? You got a proton and an antiproton. So let's say you take an electron and a positron, that's the opposites. The electron is one particle and the positron is the antiparticle. The electron will hit the positron and they'll collide, and and that forms it'll a photon will shoot off of that, right? So photons, like I was saying, are kind of outside of our fourth dimension time because they're going at the speed of light, right? So they're kind of existing more so in other dimensions. Whereas us, even though we're only aware of the third and fourth dimension, we're still existing in higher dimensions as well, right? And, obviously the afterlife, would be going out, wouldn't just be like, hey, somebody's just being recycled and going straight back to the third or fourth dimension. Obviously people could go different ways, but, until, Nu Lyfe can prove that he's actually pulling demons out of the ground and battling demons, he's really got to, just not prey upon the mentally ill conscious community. Because remember, out of the conscious community, there's a large percentage of people that are mentally ill. And like I was saying about the vectors, axis vectors, every dimension is just another axis, right? So one dimension is just, zero dimensions is just a point, right? One dimension is just a line, right? 2 dimensions are 2 lines. So that's X and Y, like an XY graph, right? Then we got XYZ, that's 3 dimensions, right? Then XYZ, and let's say you add F in there, that's 4 dimensions. And let's say X, Y, Z, F, and then I'm going to say G, and that'll be the fifth dimension. You can just keep adding them on. And, a lot of people, they stop at 10 generally. 11 generally these days, most scientists. But, there's a lot of debates on how many dimensions there are. And every dimension isn't the same. The properties of some dimensions are different, right? But the thing is that, obviously we're existing in different dimensions, and you're telling people that if their family members pass away and they don't have these specific secret Anubis rites that only you know about, or certain, Book of the Dead scholars know about, then their relatives are trapped in purgatory and, as zombies, and what I'm saying, it's the same thing. The Pope says, saying those same things, so it's like, we need to definitely vibrate higher and be aware of our mentally ill listeners. You know what I'm saying? Anytime I'm dropping lectures, I'm thinking about everybody. You know what I'm saying? You can't just not think about a whole community of people that are mentally ill, that are on the edge, living at their mom or dad's house in the basement, and they might be on the edge. You know what I'm saying? You can't, prey upon those people. You know what I'm saying? And, so at Nu Lyfe Tools, I want to see some more, diagrams. I want to see some history and of these things that you're talking about, because you're just talking about you're literally battling demons in a Santa Claus chariot. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not disputing that. I'm just saying, you got to remember there's people that are mentally ill that are listening to all this stuff, So, here at TTM Academy, we talk about science and all forms of science, even if it's, scientific realms that still haven't been proven yet, But if you're going to be dropping the science of this and the science of that, then when it's a science, you're going to have to actually, prove some of these things. You know what I'm saying? Because then you can't say it's the science of you battling, Santa Claus demons. It's the science. That's not a science. That's just that's the, the theory versus theory. You know what I'm saying? These are, if you can't prove it, it's not, it's not a science. Right? If you don't, and as far as like pedagogy, if you don't have any way of teaching your science other than somebody just listening to your channel, then it's kind of, in a way, you're kind of hustling people, right? Hustling people. They call the preacher pimp hustle, right? So that's all I had to say about that. So peace, y'all. Peace. All right. What's up, y'all? So we're going to continue the lecture from earlier today. This was a lecture in response to Bro Yosef's saying that he was like, he's fighting demons and stuff like that. He said this like Christmas sled that looked like a Santa Claus Christmas sled had these demons trapped in it. He had to rescue his relative, and he just trying to, he's preying on a lot of his mentally ill fans and subscribers. You know what I'm saying? So, when he gets into the, Candyman and the mirror talk and stuff like that, and, Facebook has certain phrases banned because of that, like I think you're not allowed to say, everyone will know. I think you're not allowed to say that, you know what I'm saying, on Facebook, because they put that because, some people were hurting themselves because of that, But today, I'm going to do a last addition to this lecture. I forgot to cover telomere strands. So as far as telomere strands, telomere strands are actually found to be, as they get shorter over time, we can see that the person's aging, so there's a connection between telomere strands and aging. So, one could say, in defense of Nu Lyfe Tools, they could say, well, hey, if you have a telomere strand that shows that as you get older, the strand gets shorter and shorter, you could say that's showing that you're slowly dying, because that's what Bro Yosef was trying to say for Nu Lyfe Tools. He's trying to say everybody's dying, but I disagree with that. I think that children are doing the opposite. They're growing. Dying is only when you're getting ill and stuff like that. So, he can speak for himself, but he's trying to speak for, he's trying to tell his followers that they're just in a kind of decrescendo going down, you know what I'm saying, their whole life, and I would say that if you, compare to life, to a song, you've got to look at the end it as more of like a final movement, you know what I'm saying? Not the whole life is not the final movement, So we're also going to get more into the Feynman diagrams. We're going to get more into the Feynman diagrams, Richard Feynman. All right. So so the last thing about telomere strands, telomere strands can show us, that aging can be improved. They're working on, extending life through telomere strands, and it's worked so far. So, as far as humans, I'm sure all the billionaires are probably investing a bunch in that. Now, onto the Feynman diagrams, the way that this relates to, actually presenting some, actual science. If we're going to talk about the science of, metaphysical bridges and the afterlife and things like that, I was bringing up photons, and photons are, particles that are outside of our normal time because they're going the speed of light. You know what I'm saying? Because once you reach the speed of light, then, everybody that's not going the speed of light, as relativity says, people that aren't going the speed of light, things are just going to slow down for them. Or actually speed up, slow down for the person that's riding the photon. But, there was a Disney movie back in the day where this kid flew in this spaceship. The spaceship picked him up in the woods, and he flew in the spaceship, and, he was gone for like 7 years from his parents' perspective, but from his perspective, he just, was flying on the spaceship for a night. And, so I'm sure a lot of y'all have seen that Disney movie, but that's just an example of relativity and how that works, And we're also going to talk about, multiverses too. And, because this, as we were just talking about dimensionality earlier, we're going to relate that to the Feynman diagrams. So the Feynman diagrams present a map. They present a map of the movement of particles, right? So particles collide, particles create new particles. Our bodies are really actually pretty much light encapsulated in different types of magnetism. You know what I'm saying? There's electromagnetism, there's, strong force, weak force. We can go through all these different forces, even the black body force, a newer force, the black body force, right? And we got gravity, force, so, as different particles can be viewed as a wave or a particle, that same principle holds true in, when you're talking about things being outside of the third dimension or things like that, because if you're talking about the third dimension, as we've covered before, the third dimension is 3 axis points, X, Y, and Z. And the fourth dimension is adding a new axis point, right? And that's time. Now, the fifth dimension, because he was talking about fifth dimensionality, like it's, just, some random metaphysical thing, but it's not. It's real science. You know what I'm saying? Because, a lot of metaphysics is real science, but a lot of it can be disproved, and some, things are evolving, and we're finding more. It's like there's even debates about the number of chakras that humans have, and that maybe all humans don't have the same number of chakras. Dog chakras, type dog chakras. There'll be weird charts and stuff like that. It's like, why is the dog chakra not lined up with the spine in it? If you type dog chakras, but so there's a lot of debates, so it's like, I believe in chakras, but I'm not against the idea of there being 12 chakras or 9 chakras or 7, but, some say, different beings have different numbers of chakras and, energy points and things like that. But yeah, so the Feynman diagrams present maps, right? A map that is outside of normal time, just like how this animation that I'm in right now is kind of overlapping and zooming out, into these different a loop of these different worlds, a couple of different worlds, right? So, as we have an electron and we have a positron, the electron can be represented by E, and you see that there's a line called a ray, right? We call that a ray, right? A ray is a line that has an arrow. So E will have a arrow going a certain direction. So that's an electron moving in a certain direction. And the opposite of an electron is a positron, and the positron is going to be moving in the opposite direction. It's going backwards in time, right? So an electron is moving forwards in time, and a positron is moving backwards in time. And it's also important to note that 10%, more within the Bohr model, 10% of the electrons in our body can be anywhere in the universe at any one time. And earlier, I'd also like to point out, I failed to mention quantum entanglement. Quantum entanglement is the science of me being able to connect with my father. Because it's like originally I came from him in a farther back in the trail of the fourth dimension. Because if you look at the fourth dimension as what you do in a day, like let's say you just look in the mirror and it's just 1 second, then that's basically showing you at that instant. But then if you do like take a time-lapse photo, like when you see cars driving through the city and you see the lights as strings, your life looks more like a worm. Like you're going to work, you're going to the grocery store, you're going to these places. It's more of like a trail of your body, And I first learned about the fourth dimension under Steve Segur at the Paideia School when I was in high school in Atlanta. And, rest in peace, Steve Segur. And, he was working with people at Brown University. And I guess he went to Brown University. But, yeah, he was working with a lot of students in the 90s. And so in high school, he was telling us about the fourth dimension. We were just kind of bugged out like, oh, wow, like it's, But really, the fourth dimension is not very difficult to understand, because really it's just time relative to our 3D world. So every higher dimension up, the fifth dimension is time relative to people in the fourth dimension. But people that are living in a fourth dimensional plane and not just a 3D plane, they, they're looking at the world in a time-lapse view. And that's similar to what Feynman diagrams are. Feynman diagrams are stepping outside of normal time and showing a bigger picture of kind of like almost like a predestination type of a thing where there's a bunch of particle events happening. It looks like a star chart. I'll show the graphs or these diagrams. They look like star charts, because you see these particles hitting each other and forming new particles. So the two rays come together, right? The positron and the electron, they both hit each other and they annihilate each other and they create a photon. And the photon is represented by the gamma symbol in Greek, but the actual visual image that Feynman used in his diagrams is pretty much the ancient Egyptian DJ symbol, the J, right? Like Jehudi. The snake, the winding snake, the wavy snake. And that's the photon symbol. So the two rays, the forward ray and the backward ray of the electrons are hitting the actual, the wavy pattern, and they become a photon, so it looks like all three of them are hitting at the same time, but they're not. What's happening is the negative electron and the positive electron, the positron, electrons are by nature negative. They're hitting each other and they're annihilating each other and they're becoming a photon, right? So that's what's happening in this picture. So the photon is then traveling, right, at the speed of light, right? And remember, electrons aren't traveling in a linear path. Electrons can, pop in and out of existence. Like I was saying, 10% of the electrons in our bodies can be anywhere in the universe. The other 90% are within our body, right? So, as far as, that type of stuff, that means that, quantum entanglement wise, we can be, a lot of different places. And that goes back to the ancestors. If you take everything on a fourth dimensional level, if you go to the car that's driving through New York City really fast and you see the trail of its light, that 4D light, if you take that car and you revert and you take go all the way back to where it was made at the factory, right? The whole worm-like trail of that car's existence, you're going to see where that car originated from. And you'd be able to see that, so in a fifth dimensional world, they'd be able to look at the fourth dimensional world like how we look at an apple or an orange as an actual object. So it's like your whole life being an actual object, right? And people from higher dimensions looking lower down, they can, they see the lower dimensions as objects, just like we see, in Mickey Mouse's world, a 2D world, we see those as actual, just an object, like hey, I have a piece of paper that's shaped like a triangle, right? And that would just be a piece of paper object, right? But in Mickey Mouse's world, he's living in a flat world. That's his whole world is on a plane, right? So there's a book called Flatlanders you might want to check out. And I believe maybe Steve Segura actually showed us that in high school, Flatlanders, And so with the Feynman diagrams, you'll see that the photon is traveling, right? It looks just exactly like the symbol in Egyptian, right? And also it's important to note too that although the Egyptian glyphs have been said to be Rosetta Stone stuff is said to be deciphered and all that type of stuff, given that it was Germans that did all that stuff, we don't know if all those phonetics are actually correct, because there's no vowels in all these things, and a lot of these things were created from a Germanic perspective. And so the people say the metanetter's been deciphered, but as far as how it's even said and things like that, we don't really necessarily know. A lot of people say, the first name of Egypt was Kuma, right? The way it was pronounced. But, there's so many different pronunciations, especially as far as the vowels. We don't know how long the vowels were or how, what they sounded like, if there were any, right? But, different, and over time, usually vowels, sounds can change. People create new accents all the time. Just like within our society, we've got languages evolving very, very quickly. Languages can evolve very, very quickly back in the day too. So just when you see the same glyphs, hieroglyphs, you don't know that, they were always spoken the same way in every dynasty, right? You can't assume that. You can never assume that. Just like we can't assume all these principles in physics apply to every universe in different multiverses, right? Another way of looking at it is like in Men in Black, when they go into the, they go into the actual, locker in the bus station or the train station. Maybe it's like Grand Central Station. I'm actually in Men in Black 3 back in time in Warhol's party. I'm actually doing a cooking dance. Shout out to Bass God and shout out to Seb, his DJ. But so as far as like time travel, different universes, all these things are all possible. There's there's infinite planes and things like that. And even if you take the strings of Laniakea, the name given to all the cluster of all the universes that we know so far, it looks like like a giant lung, like a tree, and that's how we connect back to our ancestors in the fourth dimension. The fourth dimension, would just show the trail of your entire existence, which would look like a interweaving kind of worm, or like more of an interweaving pattern of knots, right? You're tying knots or loops, if you're going in a loop in life, or if you're going to new places. If somebody's traveling around the world and always going to new places, it's not going to be loops. Where if somebody's, just going to the corner, going back home, it's just going to be a loop of going to the corner back home. And another, you could see this in Donnie Darko when out of his solar plexus, his future is kind of showing him where he's going in the future. He's seeing he's stepping outside of time and seeing his fourth dimensional trail, because to see your we can see our fourth dimensional trail when we wave our hands, but to see the entire existence of this universe as just an image is more like when you're traveling to higher dimensions, like, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th. I think the 8th is locked. I think the 8th dimension is locked, like I was saying before. Every dimension is not the same. But as far as the Feynman diagrams, you can see that the photon keeps traveling, and then it splits into two Q symbols. I'm assuming these are quarks, right? And then a little gluon, a little G bounces off into a little circular spiral. So these diagrams, they are very, very similar to TTM as well. I was influenced by these because TTM is essentially the fourth dimensional trail of the Q point. So TTM mechanics and everybody that has a matrix poster, these are all fourth dimensional movements of the crossfader over time. I'm sorry, the Q point over time, and the clicks, the clicks represent the crossfader. Because trigonometry is the movement of waves, but calculus is when you start to cut those waves up. So what turntablists are doing is calculus, you know what I'm saying? And that works with all reality and existence in general. For those that don't know, about 21 years ago, I created something called the turntablist transcription methodology, which is a system of music notation for DJ music that's used all around the world.
They call it TTM.
Turntable transcription methodology. The graph represents sounds, right?
It's used in elementary schools in the UK. So I'm going to just go over basically on a deeper level what a photon can do. Even though photons are represented by gamma, it's important to note that they're not gamma rays. You know what I'm saying? The gamma ray is a type of electromagnetic spectrum ray, but it's not all encompassing. It's just one spectrum. Gamma rays are just one spectrum. Our visual light spectrum is just a limited spectrum, right? Different insects, different animals can see much farther in different spectrums, but our spectrum is very much limited. To the whole kind of rainbow spectrum, right? And then there's infrared and ultraviolet below and above us, and then it gets to all these other types of waves and things like that. So even though they use the Greek gamma symbol for the photons are not only gamma rays. That's what I just wanted to make clear. All right. So now, if you think about particle wave duality, the fact that the Copenhagen experiments showed us that when a photon is shot through, it can act like a wave or it can act like a particle depending on if the person's looking at it or not. And that kind of goes to the tree falls in the forest kind of thing, and does it make a sound? And the Copenhagen experiment shows us it's different. It doesn't necessarily make a sound if you're not there experiencing it. And you know what I'm saying? Like, obviously things are happening, but they call them quiff pops and quiff. Seeing the experience actually affects the experience. So there's no such thing as an objective experience, because when you're actually viewing something, it's actually affecting that thing that you're viewing. You know what I'm saying? And also look up the Book of Optics. You know what I'm saying? By Al-Hazan, the Book of Optics. Because the Book of Optics, that's the first book that we know about optics. You know what I'm saying? And this was written by a black man, over 1,000 years ago, I believe. And, they've tried to whitewash him over the years, but look for the etching drawings of him. The crosshatch ones are the oldest. You know what I'm saying? If you're looking at it in the art history level, usually a lot of times the crosshatches are a lot of the oldest. You know what I'm saying? Because it's like, I grew up with all these fake history books showing just like a bunch of stuff drawn in the 1950s and 40s, 60s, different types of drawings. But you gotta really research. So look up for Al-Hazan. So the Book of Optics, and I feel like that was his Greek name. I forget what his full Muslim name was, but I'll show the screenshot of all these things that I'm talking about. But yeah, the Book of Optics, because before that, a lot of the people living coming from the Dark Ages, they thought that photons were shooting out of our eyes and scanning things. And he was one of the first to really put it down in modern book format. in Arabic, you know what I'm saying, that the photons and the light and the things are coming into our eye. You know what I'm saying? So definitely look up the Book of Optics. So with the Feynman diagrams, I'm just going to read a little bit from Wikipedia. So the photon is a type of elementary particle that serves as the quantum of the electromagnetic field, including electromagnetic radiation such as light and radio waves, and the force carrier for the electromagnetic force. Photons are massless, so they always move at the speed of light in a vacuum, right? And our bodies are made out of light, out of photons, but they're wrapped in magnetism, so they're they become other particles and things like that. And that's what the Feynman diagrams can show us. Like when you're mixing chemicals up, these different chemicals are being mixed up together, and they're forming different new strands of molecules, and certain things are bonding, certain things are knocking each other out of a certain bond, and things can alter and change, and we call that chemistry, right? So to continue that, the photon belongs to the class of bosons. Like all elementary particles, photons are currently best explained by quantum mechanics and exhibit wave-particle duality. Their behavior, and that's what I was talking about, the Copenhagen experiment, because as far as particle-wave duality, when they shot those photons through the double slit, sometimes they were acting like it was a wave going through the two double slits, and sometimes they act like there was like a shotgun blast and there's a bunch of little particles going through the double split. All right. So their behavior featuring properties of both waves and particles, right? So if we're made out of that, if we're made out of photons encapsulated in magnetism, different types of magnetism, then that goes with that, as well. You know what I'm saying? Because you can bump down using energy, you can bump down different molecules or different particles to different states. And people that do know about what's happening in Europe over the years with the super collider that's in Europe, I believe it's in Switzerland. And shout out to More Mother. Shout out to More Mother. She just won the award to be able to do her music and do her practice at the Super Collider. But I do agree with Brett Carr that More Mother needs to be careful because they've done a bunch of rituals down there at the Super Collider stuff. You can look at some of Brett Carr, Akal Ra, some of his videos, and he's got the actual ceremonies that they were actually doing at the Super Collider thing. But you can actually look that up. And actually, shout out to the actual group Super Collider. There's a group called Super Collider with Jamie Liddell. He's ill, you know what I'm saying? And the cat he did that Super Collider project with, those two albums are, two of my favorite albums of all time, probably, from like a singer, because I don't listen to R&B, but when it's glitchy beats, I like it. Aaliyah too, I like Timberland beats. But so we're going to read through the rest of this. The modern photon concept originated during the first 2 decades of the 20th century with the work of Albert Einstein, who built upon the research of Max Planck. Now, actually, obviously, we know, we're talking about, rays and snake waves and stuff like that. These diagrams, all relate to or higher technology that was, we still can't replicate pyramids and things like that. So I'm not going to even read into all of those as far as the people that discovered all these principles, because a lot of these things were unlocked when they raided Egypt in the 1800s and stuff like that. They unlocked a lot of different secrets, and we don't know which ones were locked and which ones were invented. But I'll give credit where credit's due so far. So Einstein introduced the idea that light itself is made of discrete units of energy in 1926. Gilbert and Lewis popularized the term photon for these energy units. Subsequently, many of the experiments validated Einstein's approach. In the standard model of particle physics, photons and other elementary particles are described as necessary consequences of physical laws having a certain symmetry at every point in space-time. The intrinsic properties of particles such as charge, mass, spin are determined by this gauge symmetry. The photon concept has led to momentous advances in experimental and theoretical physics, including lasers, Bose-Einstein condensation, quantum field theory, and the probabilistic interpretation of quantum mechanics. It has been applied to photochemistry, high-resolution microscopy. See, with photochemistry, the colors that are emanating from our body, you can see the elements, every element, every flame, if you burn, in the periodic table of elements, if you burn each different element, every element is going to create a different color flame. Like we know if you burn copper, like my wedding ring right here, this is my wedding ring. It's got copper in the lining, you know what I'm saying? And if you burn copper, it's going to create a green flame. Let's see if I can change the hat. Oh, there we go. It's going to create a green flame, and every other element. So I'll show the flames too of the elements. You know what I'm saying? Look all that stuff up. That's real. They never taught me that in school. They never taught me that every single element has a different color. Like, why don't they have that chart in school? So I'm going to be compiling a bunch of things for my own pedagogies for teaching all ages and all levels of students, because we've come out of the dark ages. We're still coming out of the dark ages. And I think a lot of the things that the dark ages are a part of is fracturing information and scattering it around, not putting it in one place so that people can capitalize off of it and get you a bunch of student loan debt. You know what I'm saying? Student loan debt to me is like slavery. In the future, there's not going to be student loan debt. It's like, why you're charging people for education, hoarding information. You know what I'm saying? Obviously, people should have private information, but like what they did at the beach that summer, that could be private information, their pictures. But if it's like, calculus and physics, why is it costing money from all, why is it only making, the top cast, all the money, So, back to Feynman, the way this relates to the Nu Lyfe stuff is that, Nu Lyfe was talking about the fifth dimension, but he wasn't giving any idea about what the fifth dimension is.
We cannot perceive dimensions that are higher than the fourth dimension because they exist on a subatomic level. These higher dimensions actually deal with the possibilities. If a person were living in a world of 5 dimensions, then he would be able to play with time in different ways. He could move either in past or in future. It would also be possible for him to be present at different locations at the same time. When we see a rope from large distance, we only observe its one dimension, that is the length. But any insect moving on that rope will also see other dimensions of the rope, like its thickness. It will also observe the fine grooves and roughness and circumference of the rope that could not be seen by a distant observer.
You know what I'm saying? And that's why I'm bringing up these Feynman charts, and because as we've said before, you could look at the lecture with Asir. We spoke about Asir the Ducateers. We were speaking about dimensionality as well towards the end of the lecture. And you can look at it as a box within a box within a box within a box, kind of like the Russian those Russian toys. You know what I'm saying? Where it's a little person inside of a little person inside of a little person. And so you can think of multiverses in that way. People have depicted multiverses in a lot of different ways. So multiverses can be a box within a box, right? Because some of the higher dimensions are actually smaller dimensions. Even though it's outside of our dimension, you can look at there's smaller dimensions and there's bigger dimensions, like what's happening in this animation where you're zooming out and somebody's able to look at something as like an object, you know what I'm saying? And that's what goes back to, being on the event horizon, because definitely check out the movie Event Horizon, because, in Event Horizon, they get near it and, similar stuff that happens in Interstellar. Definitely check out Interstellar. They deal with kind of like what a fifth dimensional civilization is, a fifth dimensional civilization being one that can, looks at the history as an object, and they can change history, but they have their own history because their history is in their own fifth dimension, and it's just relative, because the people that are higher up in the sixth dimension above them look at their dimension as an object. You know what I'm saying? So, a lot of people say when people pass away, they see their whole life flash before them, but who's to say that they're not just going to the fifth dimension and seeing the fourth dimension as an object. So they're just looking at their whole life as like we look at an apple or an orange, and you're moving it around, looking at the different ridges or the different parts of it. It's just like, moving your life around and seeing, all the different things that happen, right? Because if you look back on a fourth dimensional trail, everything, you're going to see, all the trails, like you move from one city to another city, shout out to Tahir Hempful, like I was saying before, in his hip hop database project, where he's breaking down the rap lyric databases, and actually he was tracking Kanye's movements through his fourth dimensional trail. He was actually, because Google Trails, that's basically like your fourth dimensional movement. So if you, think about that, like your movement over time, your ancestors' movement over time, that's a trail. So a fifth dimensional view is going to be more of a view that's looking at that, all those trails like a map. And that's what the Feynman diagrams are. The Feynman diagrams are looking at all these particle interactions as a map, all right? So, all right. So, yeah, and I'll put all those diagrams up, and that pretty much wraps everything up. Now, I have, researched, via Brett Carr's extensive research. He's always using, real diagrams. That's why a lot of times I like to watch a lot of his lectures, and real, scientific examples and things like that. And real images, you know what I'm saying, versus just talking, but shout out to everybody still that's just lecturing. I'm just talking about, when you start talking about the science of this and the science of that, you really gotta start presenting diagrams. When you start talking about science or images, or you know what I'm saying, you gotta show some pictures, show some maps, show something, you know what I'm saying. You can't just be saying you're fighting, this guy was saying he's fighting, demons and saving his ancestors, and like he's Buffy the Vampire Slayer, you know what I'm saying? And, that can push people over the edge, and that's what this lecture is about protecting the mentally ill from, Miss Cleo types, psychics that can prey upon people, just like how a psychic can tell you, can be like, oh, your future's gloomy or this and that, give me some more money. Psychics can prey on people, and YouTubers can prey on people. And that's why, it's important to, really look at the facts and really research stuff and request facts and research, because, just scaring people like that with all that Candyman stuff, that's just too much. You know what I'm saying? Dude literally said he saw a bunch of zombies come out of the ground out of a Santa Claus Christmas sled, and he saved his ancestor. And you know what I'm saying? He's saying that everybody's ancestors are, in this 100 to 1,000 year, purgatory, unless you say the proper Anubis rites and all that stuff, he's basically like cursing everybody and their ancestors, similar to what Nature Boy does when he says, leave your family. You know what I'm saying? Nature Boy does that too in his cult. A lot of cults, they tell you to cut yourself from your family, or they tell you like, oh, all your family's cursed. All your, family that wasn't that particular religion or another religion, they'll say they're cursed or something like that. So, in respecting your family and your fourth dimensional trail over the time, I'll wrap it up with saying, always think about your trail in life, and think about your 4D trail. You know what I'm saying? Think about, that path that you take. All right. So, peace.